Hello and welcome to another episode of The Other Side of Sales. I'm Kasey Jones.
And I'm Ashleigh Early.
So we're going to be really transparent with you. This month was our theme of all things video in sales. And today we were supposed to record an episode all about kind of tips and tricks of how to do video and how to look good, how to be confident on it, all of these other things. But our country is literally on fire.
Yeah, the past couple
Right
months,
now.
it's been figuratively on fire.
Yeah.
We are recording this on Saturday. It is April 30th. And every
May
night,
30th.
May 30th. And every day this week, it's been, okay, something else is literally on fire. And this is not an episode getting into the politics of the situation or passing judgment on any of the actions of what's going on in the world right now. But one of the things that I found really interesting this week is there's something, we're all dealing with stuff, and it's really important right now, especially because we always say before COVID and everything else that's going on, we've always said you never know what burdens other people are carrying. You never know what battles other people are fighting. Right now, literally everyone is fighting more battles than normal, and the numbers that are coming from that are scary. And the numbers I'm specifically talking about are the mental health impact this is having on our country. There are a lot of indicators that are showing that the instance of mental health, both people who were actively experiencing mental health issues, having their illnesses getting significantly worse, and people who are experiencing mental health issues for the first time are skyrocketing. Just some really quick, there was an article from the Washington Post, which we will link, that showed that there was a federal crisis line for people who are in emotional distress. They had 1,000% increase in April, from April 19 to April 2020 comparatively. There was a study done starting in 2007 of the Great Recession that found that for every 1% increase in unemployment, there was a 1.6% increase in suicide rate. And that if the unemployment rate hit 20%, which it did, I believe, this week, that would lead to 18,000 overdoses and 22,000 projected suicides. 1 in 5 Americans under normal circumstances experience the impact of a mental illness every year. And it is only getting worse. And it's going to keep getting worse probably for a bit. So this is going to be not a fun episode. We're not going to be cracking a lot of jokes. We're not trying to make you laugh. We're not making light of this. This is deathly serious. And we know that as the unemployment rate inches up, it's even worse, we think, among our community. So we want to talk to you today a little bit about how to recognize if you need help, how to recognize if others need help, and just to tell you, please, please, please keep fighting, keep trying. It will get better eventually, even when it doesn't feel like it. And I know I've had days where it really doesn't feel like it's going to get any better.
And I think those numbers are staggering. And it's something we all need to be kind of aware of. I think it's also worth pointing out that this is not just about the pandemic and the economy.
Yep.
And it's really important that we understand that there's a lot of complexity going on in our country. I mean, literally right now, I think there's major protests and fires in every major city in America. And so there's also a lot of people hurting for things that, if you are a person of privilege, even if you've lost your job, but you're a white American, it's really hard to understand what other people are going through. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how you can kind of take care of yourself and take care of others, but just know that things are incredibly hard right now. And the types of issues that people are facing and dealing with are super complex. And it can be very, very easy for us to get super focused on our experience and not really think about others.
Which is a
But
normal human response when things do get tough. Tunnel vision is an evolutionary thing, both physically and mentally. When stuff gets hard, you focus on the one thing that is the most important thing in that moment. And that's something we have to actively be aware of and work against.
And I think here's the deal. I've been listening to Brene Brown's new podcast, which is very good, and I highly recommend. And she did an episode a few weeks ago where she talked about this concept of comparative suffering. And the really important thing right now is to recognize that pretty much everybody is suffering in some sort of capacity. And there is absolutely no point in saying mine matters more than someone else's, or someone else's matters more than mine. This is not a competition. And looking at it that way and not giving yourself or others the time that they need to kind of process what they're going through and the space that they deserve to kind of take care of themselves, it doesn't serve anybody. So let's talk a little bit about how you can take care of yourself, but just know that every single person has a right to be dealing with the pain that they are. And we don't need to compare that their pain or your pain or my pain to somebody else's and say one is more worthy than the other. Shit's hard, it's complex, and everyone's facing some degree of it.
And something else to mention, we're going to talk about, like, this is an episode about mental health and mental wellness. This is also not something, and this breaks my heart to say, this is not something I suggest talking about with your boss, unless absolutely necessary and you know their thoughts and feelings on this stuff. But there are resources available through your employer if you're lucky enough to be employed, but this is still a very fragile, tricky subject.
So I'm going to push back on that. I don't think, I think you have to figure out what kind of relationship you have with your boss and who your boss is, because there are a lot of bosses out there that are really, really good at helping you through these kinds of things and saying, hey, I need to take a mental health day. There's a lot of companies and there's a lot of managers who work very hard to support their team. So no, you don't have to talk about it with them, and
Yes.
don't feel like you're forced to. But if you feel like they are going to support you and you feel like you have a good relationship with them, I also wouldn't say that it's something you should feel required to hide from them either.
Fair. It's a tricky thing with employers. I've been in situations where I felt it was safe for myself or others to reveal something they may or may not be experiencing. I've been in, and I hate to say it, the majority of my career have been in situations where it was not a safe place. So if you, I guess, before you think about how much to share or not share with your employer, check that. Because I hate that I have to say that. I really hate that I have to say that. But I feel like you're right.
Yeah.
I sincerely hope you are in a situation, like Kasey said, where you do have that good boss, you do have that good employer. I really, really hope that you are in that situation. But if you are not confident in that, I do suggest erring on the side of caution.
It's definitely not something in either direction that you should feel required that you can, or that you have to, or that you can't. You've got to look at your specific situation and do what's best for you, but don't feel like there are hard and fast rules around this. And that's, it's one of the reasons why this is a situation that is really challenging, is because there are no hard and fast rules, and there's a lot of nuance.
Yeah.
The important thing, though, when you are thinking about taking care of yourself, is that if there's even a whiff a feeling like you are dealing with depression or anxiety, that you talk to a professional.
Yeah.
And that you get the help that you need.
I
And
really can't.
Usually that professional can also help you figure out how you navigate who you need to communicate to, how you communicate it, and kind of the next steps there. So talk to them first, and
Yes.
and work with them to make the plan of what you do next.
Yeah. And that kind of is a great segue. Bravo there. To let's kind of talk. So there's kind of two areas we kind of want to talk to you guys about today. One is how to take care of yourself. And the second is how to take care of those around you. So obviously kind of number one thing, if just kind of taking a step back, looking at yourself, do I feel like I'm experiencing anything? And if you are even unsure right now, and I guess I should also make sure we do a big old prep bill asterisk here, not trained professionals, not doctors, not social workers, just two people who have been around long enough to know people and experienced enough to know some basics about how and when to seek care to make sure that you stay functional. If you're even considering, I wonder if I'm depressed. I wonder if I'm feeling, I wonder if this anxiety is more chronic. I wonder if this is normal. If that's even crossing your mind, please go talk to a doctor. Start with your GP. There are crisis lines if it's more serious. There are so many programs and resources, and we'll put a few in the show notes here. If you're even, like I said, if you've got a whiff of, I wonder, err on the side of going in and talking to somebody. There are screeners and forms and stuff that have you fill out, which will seem really silly, but do a really good job of identifying if there are these chemical imbalances present. And that's what a lot of this stuff is chemical imbalances. This is not something you're doing wrong or that you're defective.
And I will say, talking to your GP can help. I think talking to someone who is a trained mental health practitioner can help you navigate this with a little more, I hate to use the word again, but nuance.
Yeah.
I think because here's the deal.
I suggested starting with GP just because it's someone who you know. Sometimes it's easier to reach out to someone you know versus someone you don't.
Totally. But I think it's also, and I've had a lot of conversations with people, and I'll also say, I'm in this boat where I was dealing with really intense anxiety, especially in kind of the early bits of this pandemic, and came very close to going back on medication. I've been on antidepressants multiple times in my life. And talking to a therapist really helped me kind of evaluate if I wanted to do that and if I needed to do that, and gave me some other kind of options and some other ways to start to kind of deal with the things that I was facing and going through, which really helped. So here's the deal. Medication might be the thing, but also what I'm finding for me personally and for some of the people that I've talked to is that what's really happening is that this is bringing up issues and challenges that we've all had before, but we're just a lot easier to kind of ignore because we're stuck in the day-to-day and in the grind of things. And so oftentimes it's not a sudden chemical imbalance and it's not a sudden issue. It's bringing up things that have been there lurking in the background for a long time, and really talking to somebody to help dig into those and figure out what is your strategy of improving the things that are going on in your life today so that you can cope with this, or going on medication and or a million other things. There's a lot of options of how you can deal with this really, really, really challenging time. And being willing to really open up and kind of talk to somebody about your options can really help. And honestly, I was pretty convinced that I wanted to go back on medication. And once I started talking about it and really talking through my many options, just talking about my many options felt like a pressure release for me personally, because it was like, oh wait, there are things I can do. Yes, I feel like I'm drowning, but there are actions I can take, steps I can take that make me feel just slightly more in control of my life. And that alone really helped. So just know, like, sometimes taking that first step, and I was talking to another friend who, she actually wound up deciding to go on medication for the first time ever. And she actually said that just talking to a psychiatrist about the option, that alone started to make her feel better, because she was like, oh, wait, I can do this. There are things in my control.
Yeah.
And so just know, like, yes, those first couple of steps of going down this path can be really intimidating and scary, especially if you haven't done this before.
And can and likely will feel utterly stupid and pointless. Like, I know so many people who have told me from their experiences that those first couple steps, like, fine, I'm doing this because so-and-so made me do it, or because this, or because that. And yeah, I'd like to feel better, but the pill's not going to do that. This isn't going to do that. Talking to somebody isn't going to do it. Give yourself the chance to accept and receive the help that you need without prejudging as much as you can. There are very few cases where nothing will help. There are so many colors in the crayon box. One of them will suit what you need right now. And that's where trained professionals come in, is they know how to deploy all these and what to recommend, so that you're not trying 80 things that don't work and making everything worse. You can start with a couple different things, and one of them will probably make a difference.
Yeah. Or worse, continuing to feel like there's nothing you can do and it's a hopeless case.
Yeah.
And so being willing to kind of take a step forward and trying something, it gets you that much closer to finding something that works, finding something that helps.
And nothing is forever.
Yep.
So it's just because what works today doesn't mean it'll work tomorrow. Doesn't mean it'll work in 2 years. Just because you decide to receive help now doesn't mean you'll be doing that forever. It's one foot in front of the other, one step at a time. Go from there. Some things I want to call out, if you're doing kind of a self-check, do I think something like this might be going on? And I found a really good way to check this stuff is by talking to someone that you know and who knows you very well, and asking, have you noticed these things in me as well? If you're lucky enough to have someone you can check yourself with. But feelings of irritability, hyperreactiveness, numbness on the other side of things, growing sense of dread and doom, although that I feel like that's par for the course for everybody right now. Worrying a lot more than you normally do. Hyperactivity or hypoactivity, if all of a sudden you're doing a lot more than normal or you're doing a lot less than normal. Any of these changes on their own can be nothing or something. Right now, with what we know the numbers are telling us about the rise of these illnesses, it is super important that nothing is overlooked, because the biggest correlation between successfully managing these conditions and them becoming super severe, and the severity of these conditions, is early intervention. The earlier you reach out and can start asking, is there something going on here that I need to deal with? The easier it is to manage, the less severe it becomes. The more you put it off, the bigger it gets, the harder it becomes to manage and to treat. And just, like I said, nothing's too small. And all of these things that we're talking about, there are standard sets of symptoms, but they're a constellation. Nobody experiences depression or anxiety or any of these illnesses the same way. Everyone experiences different feelings, different descriptions of what it's like. So
and I think
don't overthink what you're experiencing.
And I think that is a really important point to keep in mind. So what I've noticed also is you might get an impression that a friend or someone that you work with is doing totally fine. And then you have a more sort of open and transparent conversation. You realize that they are also really struggling. So also just know, we have this tendency, especially, we do this all the time, but especially when we're depressed, where we kind of tell ourselves a story about either what someone else is going through or how they view what we're going through. And know that the stories we tell ourselves are usually wrong. Yeah. And because it's just not easy to tell how somebody else is doing, or for them to tell how you are doing, it's really important, one, to be reaching out and be communicating with people in your life about what you're kind of going through. Give them an insight so that they can help. Two, be really patient with people. So if you are hurting and you feel like somebody is being cavalier, know that they might not be intending that. So I think the other thing that and Ashleigh and I have talked about this a bunch, everyone's kind of on their own timeline with this thing. Yeah. And it's an ebb and flow. So sometimes I'll notice I'm having a pretty damn good week and I'm actually feeling really good. But a bunch of my close friends are having an absolutely awful week and they're really struggling. And then the next week we will trade places. And so
and it's doubly hard, because then in those moments it's like, oh, things are going well. I need to celebrate for 5 minutes so I can like capture the happiness and take advantage of this, because I know it doesn't happen very often. But if you don't have the people who you are relying on and who are relying on you aren't in that same boat and can't fake it like they normally would.
Yeah. It's tough.
It's really tough.
And it can feel really, really isolating. And so it's one of those things where it's like, recognize that it's okay to kind of take a moment and, one, celebrate a win that you have, even as the country is on fire. And literally, I mean, like I had a really good week this week, and it was hard for me towards the end of this week as protests and all this crazy stuff just started to escalate, of being like, oh, okay. See, and I need to put celebrating aside. And that's really tough.
And we talk about this kind of out of phase thing. I'm the opposite.
Yeah.
Although mine's a little bit interesting, because I comparatively had a good week, closed a couple clients. Yay, that's great. But at the same time, a lot of other things were really difficult.
Yeah.
So on the whole, like I started this call with you saying I had a rough week.
Yeah.
That this was a tough week for a lot of different reasons. So like you said, it's like, I'm be the first one to be like, yeah, you did a great job. It's like, I can't right now.
Totally.
I'm just not in a celebratory thing right now. I'll send you some happy emojis, but like, I'm not going to be someone who can sit here and listen to someone glowing about how everything's awesome in their life right now.
And that's the thing, is like, we have to be really patient. Yeah. Like, we can't expect other people to be in the same space that we are.
And you have to be willing to say, I'm not in that space right now, which is something a month ago I would have thought through and been like, no, that's great. I'm so happy for you. And like inside, I'm wanting to throttle you slightly.
Yeah.
Which is not what I want to do. So it's being confident enough in what you're feeling to say, you know what, I'm happy for you, but I'm not from a place of self-care. I can't do that as much. And if you surround yourself with the right people, they will get it. It's just that little element of communication, which is kind of that last element of self-care. It's tell the people around you. And not everybody, please trust me, we are not saying start your cold calls if somebody asks how you're doing with, oh yeah, I'm really depressed. We are not saying that. We're saying within your network, within your tribe, not even your network, within your tribe, your closest, your 7 to 10, your inner circle.
Yeah.
Make sure. And that brings to kind of the other side of this, which is it's not just about helping yourself. It's also about helping those around you.
Absolutely.
And kind of going back to recognizing if something's going on. On a more personal note, there are several people in my life who have severe mental illnesses that they battle, and they are my heroes for doing so. And in almost every single case that I can think of these people who are very near and dear to me, someone else helped ring the bell to say something is wrong.
Yep.
So if someone in your inner circle, you think, they're behaving differently. I wonder if.
Yeah.
My request of you is be brave and approach that person and tell them you love them and tell them what you've seen, because you don't know, even among your close friends, what's in their head. And it's so important to have those checks. It's so important to have that. And if they are feeling it, it will help them feel seen and feel loved, and they will they will feed off your courage and hopefully use that to turn things around. And if they're not, they know you love them and you get some peace of mind.
And I think that's such a good point. And I think here's the other thing I've also learned. So one of my friends who's just gone on the antidepressants, we had a really honest conversation about kind of what she'd been going through. And because this was new for her, when her therapist first suggested it, she was pissed. She was like, "What are you trying to say?" She was angry. And she brought that up with me, being like, "Who the hell does she think she is?" And I was like, I said, I chimed in on the things that I had noticed, my experience of going on antidepressants when I've been going through hard things. And she was like, oh, maybe I should consider this. And wound up doing it, feeling way, way better, and is super grateful. But she kind of needed somebody to be like, to validate what somebody else had been seeing and also normalize it.
Yeah.
If this is new for you, or if this is new for a friend of yours, sometimes it's like, there is still a stigma around mental health. And so they might be feeling like they're failing for some reason, or that they should be able to get through this without help and things like that. And so we can all play this role of normalizing the fact that like we all go through hard shit.
Yeah.
And sometimes we need chemical help, and pretty much always we need human help.
Yes. Just a fun story here for a sec. A slight moment of levity.
Fun?
Slight fun. I know someone who recently was diagnosed with ADD through this whole process. Yeah. And she and I were talking, and it was really funny because she was doing reading and found that ADD and ADHD, they're like in 95% of cases, there is a genetic component or a family history. Yeah. So she starts just, informing her family, and everyone in her family says, "Oh my gosh, that's your dad. Oh my gosh, that's your dad." This is what's funny. She calls her dad, says, "Hey dad, this thing, you should probably think about this." And a couple other people in the family have also mentioned you have some of these behaviors. Kind of blows it off. Within 5 minutes of hanging up the phone, texts her back, and she showed me this text. It's basically, "Well, apparently your mom and my wife, so the two women who have lived with me, both agree that I have ADD."
Yeah.
Within like 5 minutes. And the sweetest guy on earth. But that's the thing. Sometimes you need these people to be brave and tell you to your face, yes, something's changed.
Yep.
You're not okay. Or you don't seem okay. Or you're not as this as you normally are.
Yeah.
And this is okay. So that being brave, it can never hurt as long as you do it from a place of, I love you. I'm saying this because I love you.
Yeah.
And if there's anger, if there's frustration, that's okay. At least you spoke your piece. Yeah. I know people who have struggled with intense guilt because they saw signs of suicidalism and severe depression, and they didn't speak up. And that person experienced either an attempt or actually succeeded and died.
And I just want to make a quick point, and I think we have talked about this on the show. I think there's these issues of kind of severe mental illness have become a lot more common in the sales world.
Yes.
And so last fall, I went on Surf and Sales, and then I went to the AAISP something or other event in Boston. And over like a 10-day period, I heard two really heartbreaking stories about like top sales reps that no one had any idea that anything was going on, and both died by suicide.
Which to be fair, makes sense. We are trained in sales to portray that everything is great. Our product is amazing. It's all about the client, which means we have to work double time to reach out and to help and to check in. And you see this again and again, especially in a lot of suicides, is everything will look completely fine until it isn't.
Exactly.
So I would even say in this climate, if you know someone who looks like they are doing absolutely fantastic,
check in.
But they're a friend, just reach out and say, hey, it looks like everything's going great. I care about you. I just wanted to check in. Are you really okay? Yeah. Are you good? Can I help? And and I'll say this, even if you're not 100% okay, just that act of checking in and just telling, no, I had a week, I had a bad month, things kind of suck right now. It's not about fixing it. It's about making sure that you are seen and that those in your inner circle are seen as well. That in so many cases makes an incalculable impact on these things.
Yeah, no, and I totally agree. And I think if you are willing in those situations, think about sharing the hard stuff you're going through first, because there's something that when you open that door first, it makes it so much easier for somebody to walk through it with you.
Yeah.
And I think that's the other thing that, we do in the sales world, like, because we're, people are competitive and, we want to look like we've got it all figured out. We often don't ask for the help that we need. And when I'm talking about in closing a deal or, like actually doing our job. But I think that's also very much the case when it comes to kind of the more personal and the more emotional stuff.
Yeah. So check in, take care of each other. If somebody's reaching out to you asking if you're okay, assume they're not. Assume they're coming from a place of they care about you. And one of the things, as bro-y and annoying as this community sometimes tends to be, I have been very rarely, very, very rarely anything but impressed and overwhelmed by the support that is given when it's asked for.
Without a doubt.
I'm not going to say it's never going to happen that you're going to ask for help and somebody's going to be a jerk, because it's happened and it will happen, but it is so the exception to the rule.
Yeah. And by and large, it'll be like one person being a jerk, not like the team being a jerk. I think this community, if there's one thing that you can say about salespeople, we have a lot of heart.
Yeah.
And that means like we go to battle for one another and for the people in our kind of world and in our circle. And I will also just say, like, there's only so much that Ashleigh and I can do, but if there is something we can do, we're here. Like, you just have to let us know, and we will do what we can.
And I think kind of as maybe a final note, just a little bit of an appeal. If you are feeling really frustrated, if you are feeling really anxious, if you are feeling very hurt and depressed and everything's starting to, and you have more and more moments where it feels like, it would just be easier if I blank.
Yeah.
We see you, we hear you, we want you in this community, we want you in this world. The world is dimmer without you. And I don't know you individually, probably. If I do, I hope you'll reach out and tell me. But even if I haven't connected with you yet, you have value and you matter to so many more people than you probably realize. And I sincerely hope that you find the strength to go one more day. And I know that that's all that I can ask if you're really in the deep of it.
Yeah. And I'm sort of surprised that we haven't said it yet. Also, please, please, please check out Uncrushed. It's an
Yes. Oh God.
amazing nonprofit started by salespeople, all about bringing attention to mental health issues in the workplace.
Yeah.
If you feel like you're going through something and you feel alone, go
Yes.
to that site. I think it's uncrushed.org,
It
and
is.
it is filled with stories. And
I'll say, and Tim Clark was
mine
our
is
first
there.
interview.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tim Clark was our first interview. Go listen to episode 2.
Yeah. And there's a ton of people that we've interviewed.
Mm-hmm.
So James Buckley has a great story on Uncrushed, and he's super involved. There's a bunch of others, and it will make
And
you
there's
feel
more to
just a
come.
little less alone. And they've got a ton of really great resources. So get the help that you need.
Take
Because
care of your.
Ashleigh's right.
Yeah.
You have value, and the world will lose something if it loses you.
So take care of yourself. Take care of each other. It will get better.
Yeah.
It will. This will pass. I don't know what it's going to look like on the other side. And I'm not going to say that you're going to leave this situation better than when you started it, but you will leave it stronger.
Yeah.
Whether it feels like it now or not.
Yeah.
So with that, thank you for listening. I hope you are doing okay. I hope this helps in some small way in this world as there is. Please don't hesitate to reach out. Twitter, LinkedIn, othersideofsales.com. Please don't forget about the State of Sales survey. It is going to stay open through the end of June. We'll talk more about that later. But with that, thank you for listening to another episode of The Other Side of Sales.